Well, welcome once again. This is the Doctor of Digital at the Doctor of Digital podcast. The purpose of the show is to transform your business and life with education and inspiration. I introduce busy business leaders to trends in business, technology, and marketing to highlight people you should know. Are you a business owner or entrepreneur struggling with constant overwhelm and feeling stuck in the day-to-day grind? If so, you're not alone. Many entrepreneurs find themselves trapped in a cycle of stress and inefficiency, unable to break free and achieve the success they desire. But what if there is a way to regain control of your time, streamline your operations, and unlock a path to lasting prosperity? Meet Ral West, the leading business podcaster and creator of the acclaimed online course, Overwhelm, Create a Smooth Running Business with Less Stress. With over 40 years of entrepreneurial experience, Ral has honed a unique set of strategies and systems that have helped countless business owners and entrepreneurs break free from the shackles of overwhelm and achieve true success. From building and selling businesses to mastering customer service, team building, and financial management, Ral's expertise spans the entire spectrum of entrepreneurial challenges, making her the perfect guide to help you chart your success to a thriving, stress-free business. During this episode, we'll do a deep dive into the changes and hot topics of business adaptability and the biggest challenges and growth. I will leverage the expertise of my guests and how to navigate the unique dynamics of the field. By the end of this episode, you'll be better equipped to know what to do, and I encourage you to contact my guest, Ral West, owner, entrepreneur, founder, and also speaker, living the dream, creator of the 6 essential secrets to business success. With that, I want to welcome Ral to the program. How are you doing today?
I'm great, Mick. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. You know, I've really wanted to get you on the program because you have so many things to share. So I'm really curious, like, how did you get into what you do? Is there a pivotal moment? Is there something that you had, maybe that aha moment that you realized this is what you should be doing?
Well, it was a little over a year ago that I was talking with one of my adult daughters, and she was saying, Mom, everybody says you and Dad are living the dream, and they really want to be like you, and they want your life. Well, actually, a lot of people want us to adopt them. But aside from that, she said, why don't you just teach people how to do what you guys have done?
Yeah.
You're able to run your businesses and still travel the world, enjoy your 2 homes, your yacht. You've got it made, and teach people how to do it. So I decided, well, what's one more business? Might as well start another one.
Sure, why not? That's one of the things I really want to dive into as well, too. And over the course of your career, you've seen some biggest changes. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about the things that you have seen, the changes that have happened.
Oh, well, in over 40 decades, so much has changed. I mean, like it feels like the Stone Ages. When I first started my very first business in Anchorage, Alaska in the early 1980s, we didn't have fax machines. We didn't have cell phones. I was working on a typewriter. We didn't even have the computers that we have today. So there's that. And then, of course, communications, technology. I mean, it goes on and on and on. But the basics of business and the principles of how to establish a successful business, that hasn't really changed.
Okay. So I'm curious now, over 40 years, this is a lot of time. That probably gives you a really good perspective. And that's what I would argue. If you know the past, you can predict the future and you understand the present so much better. So I'm curious if you could say, what are some hot topics that you would find in business today? What should people be paying attention to?
Well, I think everybody needs to be watching what's going on around them in the world. Don't just keep your laser focus with the blinders on. You
Right.
have to be aware of the big trends. Right now, one of the big trends that everybody's talking about, of course, is artificial intelligence or AI.
Mm-hmm.
And businesses have to figure out how to use it. And most of us are just barely dabbing our toes into it, but it is the coming thing. And businesses who don't use AI in some way are going to be left behind.
I'm curious because this is a hot topic, but one of the things they'd say about your unique approach is that, and I'd like you to recommend for business owners, because you haven't confined yourself to one business or one thing, and you've actually done a number of things, very adaptable. So I'm curious if you could say and recommend what should business owners be thinking about in running a business?
So many things, Mick. The six essential secrets to business success that I've written about
Yes.
incorporate things like systems, creating the systems to make sure that your business is running smoothly and
Sure.
efficiently, and using leverage. And there's many, many different types of leverage. AI is one of them. Having a great team. Even if you're a solopreneur, you still need a team. Now, the team might not be employees and they might not work full time, but you're still going to need support. And there are certain expertise and skills that you don't have. We don't have everything under our belts. So we have to reach out. And you need to also make sure that you're very intentional about your corporate culture and make sure that your customer service is unequaled. There's no excuse for the shoddy customer service that we see around us these days. It is just not that hard to please and delight your customers. And I think businesses who really focus on that and all the other things I've just mentioned can't help but win.
I'm curious because what you haven't done is to stick to one thing or one field. So I'm curious if you could talk a little bit about that and what were recommendations for business owners, because they do tend to get sort of laser focused or maybe overly focused on one thing or one area.
Well, again, you have to keep your eye on all the balls that are floating around. So when I started, I grew up in the tourism industry,
Okay.
and my first business was a marketing consulting agency, but specialized in tourism. And then I met my husband, and he was in real estate, and he kind of picked my brain and learned about tourism and decided that he wanted to get into it because he wanted the free trips to Hawaii that I was enjoying. So we created a business that was based in Anchorage, Alaska, and we rented condos that other Alaskans owned and just got commissions for the condos. But then we added rental cars and inter-island air, and then eventually we started adding the trans-Pacific air and grew a company from nothing to 8 figures of annual revenue, ran the business for 25 years, sold it to Alaska Airlines, which is a Fortune 500 company. And then we pivoted. So our pivot from there was not to other airplanes or other airlines, but there were a number of companies in Alaska that had small cruise ships, but the companies had gone bankrupt. So the ships were sitting at a dock and basically rotting. And we were able to buy them for pennies on the dollar. And we did. And then we fixed them up. We poured more money into them to make them ready for customers and chartered them to an operator because we didn't want to operate them ourselves.
Sure.
So we found a cruise line and they chartered all the ships from us. We eventually had 5 small cruise ships and did that for a number of years, like 10 years. And then COVID kind of brought a halt to that because cruise ships were pretty much tied up at the docks during
Right.
COVID.
Sure.
And again, looking at what's going on in the world around you, it's like, okay, maybe this is a sign that it's time to pivot away from the cruise industry. So we took our time and analyzed the world, the economy. Where are people investing and what is growing and what will be safe no matter what happens in the world? And we turned to real estate. Again, we'd had quite a few years of experience with real estate that we'd been purchasing individually, but then we
Mhm.
learned about the ability to syndicate and join with others and partner on purchasing large apartment complexes,
Yeah.
100 units or more.
Right.
And we have since invested in over 6,000 apartment units in states throughout mostly the southern United States
Okay.
where people are moving. So you follow the trends. You look at what the statistics are, and the statistics are that owning a home is becoming more and more prohibitive cost prohibitive. Interest rates are putting them out of reach of a lot of people.
Mhm.
So they're going to rent. So apartment buildings are going to be around for a long, long time. And having real property is a real hedge against inflation. And we've certainly
Sure.
seen inflationary times. So we found a mentor, because that's another thing I would say to business owners: find a mentor or more mentors, because you have to learn more than you already know. And there are just so many people who have specific expertise that you don't have. So we got a mentor, we joined a mastermind group, we learned how to do it. And so it's been about 3 years, about 3.5 years that we've been in that particular pivot. And then, as I said, a year and a half ago, I started this new business. Well, that's a totally other industry, like education, online courses, being a business coach. I mean, you know, but again, it's a growing trend. All you have to do is look at the numbers of people who are using this type of education to further themselves. And that greatly expanded during COVID, but it hasn't slowed down. So I think that no matter what industry you're in or what field you're in, there are opportunities, and you just have to keep your eyes open. Look at statistics, look at trends, keep your eye on the economics, the politics, everything.
Mm. Now, I'm going to count maybe at least four different pivots there. And this is what I find really fascinating about your story. And this is what I'm really curious about too. Could you walk us through maybe even the emotional side of this? Because I think this is one drawback for a lot of business owners. They get stuck in a field, but what you have been able to accomplish are these major pivots because these industries don't necessarily connect to one another. So, how did you do this? How did this come about?
Well, you rely on the generalized principles that apply in all cases. I mean, I think that what I've learned in the various businesses that we've had. Oh, and I forgot to say that we owned a motel and RV park for about almost 20 years also. Um, and some of our real estate endeavors involve short-term vacation rental. That's yet another, field. And the thing is, though, that these concepts of business are transferable. You have skills that you develop in one particular business. They can be easily transferred to another industry or another business. You just have to realize the generalized nature of these skills and apply them. But above all, you have to have some guts. You have to be willing to take some risks. So, a lot of the things that we have done have been the type of things that really raise the eyebrows of our CPA. It's like, you're going to do what?
Yeah.
You know that's really high risk. And we're like, yes, we know that, but we've done our homework, we've done the calculations, we've done the math, and have our spreadsheets, and we feel that it's a calculated risk, and we think that we'll be fine. So sometimes we've won and sometimes we've lost, but more often we've won.
Yeah, it's always reminds me, and being open to this sounds to me like, the saying that if you think you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room because you're willing to learn and willing to grow, even
Absolutely.
though you've been in business for some time and even been successful, but you still look for a mentor, which is a really interesting point.
Oh, absolutely. And I haven't stopped. I mean, just a few weeks ago, I was in Florida studying with Tony Robbins at Business Mastery.
Yeah.
And there's so much more to learn. And, some things keep changing all the time. I mean, like, what's the latest social media trend? Or, as I was saying before about AI, these are things that you have to stay on top of. And if
Mhm.
you stick to your knitting, you're not going to learn what's happening. And I'm addicted to lifelong learning. And I think that's been one of my strengths. And the other strength that I have that I recommend to all business owners is that when you learn something, apply it. Don't just read the book and put the book down and then walk away from it. Actually use the things that you just read about, or the things that you got in a course or a seminar, or whatever, or things that a mentor told you. You know, be willing to actually execute.
And of course, you have a recent endeavor too that you've mentioned a couple times. So I'm really curious if we can talk about the course because this is fairly new and this is another new endeavor and something else that you tried. But this is the how do you do things as opposed to something completely different. Can you tell us a little bit about the course? Because that's new.
Okay, well, the course is called Overcome Overwhelm, Create a Smooth Running Business with Less Stress. And the genesis of this course is the fact that, you know, 2 or 3 decades ago, I was the overwhelmed, overworked entrepreneur.
Okay.
I didn't sleep much. I ate very poorly. I didn't exercise. I didn't have time for any of that.
Okay.
So, I know what I'm talking about when I'm talking about people who own a business and, well, really, the business owns them.
Yes.
And they need to figure out a way out of that.
Hmm.
So when we were about 10 or 12 years into running our business when we were still up to our eyeballs in the day-to-day management of the business. And we realized that this was not sustainable. We had a young family. We were barely had time to spend with our kids or each other, you know.
Yeah.
So things had to change. So we were learning and we were adapting and we were applying the lessons that we were learning. Some of the things I learned in college, I went back to college in my late 30s
Okay.
because I'd been a dropout when I was 19. And so I went back to college not because I needed to excel in my career. I already owned a business, so I didn't need that as a stepping stone. I just wanted to learn more. And every day that I would come to the office after having been at class the night before, I would say to my team, guess what I learned last night? Guess what we're going to do? And of course, I got the, oh no, what's she going to make us do now? But those were the things that made our business excel. We had a remarkable culture. We had an amazing team. We used the things that I learned. And I kind of joke that that business was my little laboratory. It was my little guinea pig because I could take the lessons from the university classes and just go right into my business and test them out. So that's what we did. And we also had one of our mentors early on was Robert Kiyosaki, who wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad. But when we started studying with him, he hadn't written the book yet. And we were able to have lunch with him on the Big Island in Hawaii one time, early 90s. And he said to us, you need to get this book. And the book was The E-Myth by Michael Gerber. And so we said, okay. And that afternoon, we went to a bookstore and we got the book and we started reading it. And it was like, oh my God, yes, this is it. This is what we need to do. And it was quite a bit about establishing systems and about taking the entrepreneur from the operator position to being an owner and working on your business instead of in it. So we'd already put quite a few things in motion in our business to organize it and strategically get it positioned for growth. But that book was a game changer for us,
Hmm.
and took that and ran with that for 5 years and learned how to create the systems and how to develop the measurements, the KPIs. In those days, we didn't even use the term KPI. We just knew that we needed to have data that we could track and that we could, gauge our performance according to these benchmarks, and had the whole team looking at the same data. Another book that Robert Kiyosaki recommended was The Great Game of Business. I think it was Jack Stack wrote that. And he talked about open book management. And we're like, whoa, what's that? What's open book management? And he was recommending that you open up your financials to your entire team and
Wow.
make sure that your entire team knows everything about the money that's coming in and going out in your
Hmm.
business. So we had, a young business. A lot of our employees were very young. They didn't know anything about reading a financial statement. Profit and loss, P&L, what's that?
Hmm.
So we taught them. We had little classes and we sat them down and said, here's our financials, and this is what you need to look for, and this is what this line means, and that's what that line means, and this is what the bottom line means. And it worked because they jumped on board. We got alignment in our team. They were excited about what we were going to achieve together. And then we made sure that if we won, they won. So
Yeah.
we had very elaborate bonus programs. And sometimes the bonuses were big enough that they could make a down payment on a house.
Wow.
And that was exciting. I mean, all of us were in tears. It was so wonderful to see. But we used the things that we learned in our business, and obviously there were mistakes, and there were things that we had to like, okay, make some corrections here. That didn't work quite the way that we thought it would. So you hone it. It's about progress, not perfection. And any business owner who thinks that they're going to be getting it right all the time, think again. You know, you have to be willing to learn as you go along, and you're going to make mistakes. And that's great because those mistakes are learning experiences, and that's how you grow.
It's interesting. It reminds me of some of the things that Jack Welch did in the Jack Welch Management Institute, because he said, teach you on one day, go back, teach your team the next day, and evaluate the next. But it's that constant learning and constant going back and evaluating. So I'm curious, with so much background and so many things, could you talk about just some actionable tips? Like, what are some takeaways that you would like to share, and what could a person get out of what you've learned?
Well, besides taking my course, obviously.
Yes,
But
right.
um, well, I've mentioned some of them already, but I'll delve into them a little bit more. Systems is a big thing. And I think it's a word that is often misunderstood. A system doesn't have to be complex. It doesn't have to be something that, like, oh, I don't know how to do that. A system can be as simple as creating a spreadsheet to track the parts of a particular project and make sure that you know who's assigned to do what task and when it needs to be done. I mean, that can be a system. I have systems in my personal life that help me, and the how can you do all this stuff and still travel and have the life that you want? Well, I've got systems. I have a system that helps me keep track of birthdays. I have a system that helps me keep track of medical appointments. I mean, it's all very easy. And you have to have some systems, because systems goes along with leverage.
Yeah,
You have to get leverage. You cannot do it all yourself. And nobody's figured out a way to create more than 24 hours in a day. And it's not really a good idea to work 24 hours in a day.
right.
So you have to have leverage. You can't create more time, but you can multiply your time by doing things smarter. So, one way of using systems and leverage together is to look at all of your tasks, everything that you do in a typical day, a typical week, and then group some of those tasks together that are similar. So say that bill paying is one of your tasks. Well, why would you spend 5 minutes here and 5 minutes there or whatever paying bills? Lump them all together, pick one day a week or a month and pay all your bills. Or better yet, automate them so you're not really paying the bills yourself at
Yeah,
all. Or hire a bookkeeper, make sure the bookkeeper pays your bills, or an office manager or a VA. There's so many ways that you can structure things so that you don't have to be paying attention to all of these minute details, because the details can drown you. And that's where you're feeling really overwhelmed. It's
yeah,
too many details. So you have to take it one bite at a time, but get those
mhm,
details handled in some kind of system, some way to automate them or delegate them.
yeah,
Now, that's another strategic thing that I've learned, is that delegating is often something also that people don't do right. They think that they're delegating by just saying, would you just handle that? And then they wonder why things fall apart.
mhm,
Well, because you have to clearly outline exactly what you're delegating, when you want it done, how you want it done,
yeah,
what it's supposed to look like when it is done. What that we used to always say, what does a good job look like? Well, if you don't spell that out for them, how do you know that you're delegating in a way that it's going to produce the result that you want? And that's what keeps a lot of people from delegating, is they think, well, if I delegate that, it's not going to be done right. Well,
yeah,
you're right. It's not, unless you delegate properly.
sure.
So that is a strategy, and it requires a system. It requires writing down standard operating procedures.
Yeah,
Sometimes it requires having a manual. All businesses should have manuals. Even if you're a solopreneur, you should have a manual. You should write down your steps. You should have your checklists. You should have your spreadsheet that outlines what you have to do for getting each thing done. And today there are so many apps that help us to do this. It's amazing. Things that you can use to coordinate work across thousands of miles. Apps where you can work together in real time over the internet. It just doesn't have to be complicated.
With so much, now I'm curious that how do people get a hold of you? You've mentioned the course and you've got a lot of wealth of experience. So what would you recommend a person do to reach out? How do they get in touch? What's your contact information?
Very, very easy.
Okay.
It's ralwest.com, www.ralwest.com. And there are places on the website where you can sign up to get my free copy of my 6 essential secrets to business success.
Nice.
Excuse me. And you can also sign up to get information about the course. And you can read a lot more about me and my career and some of the things that I have done, and some of the strategies and principles that I recommend that business owners use, because I do firmly believe that if you adhere to these 6 principles and make sure that you focus on them, you will find more success and your life will be better.
Yeah. It's like more for you, more for the world. That's good. It's a win-win as far as I could see. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, your knowledge, and everything you have. And it's really great to hear that you have such success and you can share it with everybody else there. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Well, thanks, Mick. It's been fun.
Likewise, this has been one of those great episodes. And of course, so that's just what we want from the Doctor of Digital podcast. So if you like what you're hearing, make sure that you like, subscribe, positively review, and share the Doctor of Digital podcast with others. Also want to thank the supporters of the program, and that is those of the publishers of Burning America and also On Track Ian Hunter for their support. I appreciate everything they've done. Those volumes, of course, are available on Amazon. Now, if you want to reach me, of course, there's easy to do as well. The Idea to Author Coach, guiding your journey from draft to shelf. Everything I do is a private Facebook group, but you can join it. Just let me know if you need some help. That is the Idea to Author Coach, private Facebook group. Join me, and maybe you can learn some more as well. So until next time, thank you, and take care of all the exciting people that are coming on the show. Support the program. Thanks for listening in. Until next time, this is the Doctor of Digital signing off. Deus Volt.